Rashidrahman Abdurrahman, in this package, we'll be telling you the very latest from Parliament, where we understand sitting has been adjourned to 18th of January as a result of the scuffle that we saw last night. And we understand both sides of the House will be engaging till they resume, so that's the controversial issue, which is the Elevy, in fact, which has dominated discussions since the budget was laid before the House, will be resolved. My colleague, Homo Kusum has just returned from Parliament. A while ago, you saw her reporting live from the House, telling us all that has been happening, and she's going to tell us more of what she's gathered. But first, the minority and majority have been addressing the press, explaining what happened last night. And of course, from what we have gathered, they are rendering an apology to the misconduct that we saw in Parliament last night. Let's go for the soundbite first.
To be on the floor. As a member of Parliament, he was entitled to a vote. So either way, whether presiding or on the floor, a deputy speaker is not forbidden by any rule, any constitutional prohibition or standing orders from having a casting vote. So why the injection of violence with people moving, the minority moving from their place to come and physically prevent the deputy speaker from assuming the chair? Why? In Parliament, we debate issues with brain power, not brawn. With brain power, not brawn. So if you disagree with me, and that's what I was telling the deputy minority yesterday, whenever you are here, you see what happens. Whenever the minority leader has to speak, we are all ears, we want to listen to him. Whenever any member from the minority leadership gets up, they wouldn't want to listen.
What has happened in Parliament is that yesterday, you see, Parliament is not about a majority sitting at a Kumasi MPP conference where the president thinks that he has majority or a majority group. It's about those present in the chamber and voting and exercising that right. He must accept that Ghanaians voted for a hung Parliament for him to deepen consultation and to reach out to the other side of the Ghanaian populace who don't want excessive partisanship and the bullying of it. For us, we are happy. We won't be bullied any longer as a minority.
Now, we're still a while on this issue because, as I told you, my colleague Homo Kusum has just returned from Parliament and joins me in the studio with some details from all that has been happening since last night. Homo, I can see that you're stressed, having spent half of your night in Parliament and went back early morning to bring us whatever is happening from the floor of the House. What can you tell us aside what we've just heard from both sides of the House, even before we settle for some other details?
I think it's unfortunate, especially just a few days after the Speaker himself, Mr. Abambagwen, apologized to Ghanaians and promised Ghanaians that this thing was not going to happen again. The whole issue about the e-levy is just an attempt by the minority to ensure that it doesn't get approved. You know, it's very important to the government because they say it's a way for them to raise revenue for their infrastructure development and then other developmental projects. But the attempt by the minority to ensure that this does not see the light of day, it's how the whole issue of it being raised under a certificate of urgency rose yesterday. You know, if this levy or this bill at this particular stage that it hasn't been able to get approved, it means that it's going to make it very difficult for government to see its implementation by January. That's the whole idea of the minority ensuring that it doesn't get raised under the certificate of urgency. what happened at the committee level yesterday, there was a letter from the finance minister who was appealing to the House to raise it under the certificate of urgency. That was how the whole issue started at the committee level. Unfortunately, the minority, even though they tried to shut it down, they didn't have the numbers, because even though they had 12, the chairman of the committee at that particular time does not have an original vote. But in a tie like that, he will get a casting vote. So when it got to that stage, he took advantage of that. He had that right. He took advantage of that, and then they got their way through. That was how the minority, they were not very happy. I think they were expecting some kind of...
The chair of the committee being a member of the government to have sided with them.
I would have been surprised if it had happened, but...
Not in our kind of politics.
Definitely. So the minority definitely were not happy about it. And then they went ahead to talk about the percentage, the 1.75%. And they got it shut down through the same process. So from the onset, around 2 p.m. when they came, they told the media that, okay, this is what they were dealt with. They are ready to fight it through the chamber. And I think that's exactly what they attempted to do. Now, when it comes to the speaker in the chair having the opportunity to take part in a voting process.
That's the deputy speaker.
That's the first deputy speaker. The constitution and the standing orders are all not very clear, even though the majority leader was trying to justify it. It's not very clear. That's why probably the minority didn't really want to understand that.
And just to add to your point, I listened to the deputy majority leader, Afenyo Markins, who sometime last week said the standing orders and the constitution is silent on whether if you assume the seats as a speaker, whether being the substantive speaker or as a result of the fact that the speaker has vacated the seat and you needed to step in for him, you will have a casting vote or otherwise. And I think that has also led to the contention that we saw. But very briefly, Umo, have they apologized for what happened last night, because a section of Ghanaians seem not happy with the more or less misconducts that we saw last night?
It looks like the tempers are still high on both sides, because the speaker himself was not in seat today. I think the House were expecting him to be in seat so that he can resolve all these issues. But unfortunately, when we spoke to the minority side, they said there was a communication for the speaker that he was on his way, and he wanted the first deputy speaker to take the seat, or like whilst he's on his way. But unfortunately, he couldn't get there in time. For now, it looks like both sides think that I am right, what you did was wrong, and tempers are still very high. I think it's the best now that the House is on recess. We can say that maybe the minority have gotten its way somehow, because they have found a way to delay the process for a bit. But let's not forget that the bill has not been withdrawn. It's still before Parliament. And if the House resumes before 18th or under 18th, the process could continue. But one thing for sure is that both sides are saying that they need to do further consultations, further deliberations. So it looks like both sides are ready to sit to sit on the table and discuss it. When we spoke to the deputy minority leader, he said that if the government is ready to sit on a table and make some changes to the levy, maybe they'll be ready to support it through. So we'll just see what happens by 18th. We'll just see how it goes.
Thank you so much. Homo Kusum Abdullahi is our parliamentary correspondent and has been helping us with the analysis of what happened since last night, the scuffle that we saw in Parliament. We stay a while longer on this issue because we've been joined by Dr. Rashid Dramani, Executive Director, Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs, to also help us with some more analysis on this development. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. For a while, I thought after what we saw on the 9th of 7th January, we're not going to see any sort of scuffle of what we saw last night in Parliament again. Were you surprised? Doc, can you hear me? We've lost Dr. Rashid Dramani on the line. Reaction team will raise him to help us with some more analysis. Doc, can you hear me? We seem to be having a challenge with the lines, but we are trying to raise him back. Is Dr. Rashid Dramani?
I cannot hear me. Look.
Yes, can you hear me, Doc?
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you, Doc. Doc, if you can hear me, I was asking whether you were surprised with what happened in Parliament last night. Technology seemed not to be our friend this afternoon. We'll try to raise him back. In fact, we are discussing the event of last night in Parliament where there was a scuffle between members of the majority and minority over the approval of the electronic transfer levy, which has been the bone of contention in the budget 2022 since it was laid on 17th November. The minority says government will have to take it out of the budgets. In fact, we know the budget has been approved. The has also been approved because government has other revenue sources that it will get some funds to run the country. But this controversial levy has been the bone of contention. The minority is not ready to change its position. They are calling for its complete withdrawal. The government is also looking at the nearly 9 billion Ghana cedis is going to raise, which is part of the 100 billion cedis government is seeking to raise as far as revenue is concerned in the 2022 budget. We'll try to raise Dr. Dramani back on the line to help us with more analysis, but let's do some other stories which has also dominated headlines in the course of the day. We have Dr. Dramani back on the line. Doc, sorry for the challenge we've been encountering. I was earlier asking whether you're surprised with what happened in Parliament after the apologies both sides of the House rendered over what we saw on the 9th of 7th January.
Well, I wasn't surprised because the lessons from the 7th of January were, number one, they need to work together. Number two, they need to remember that it's not going to be business as usual. And number three, most importantly, they need to always build consensus. Now, we went into the budget session with a kind of zero-sum mindset because each side wanted everything or nothing. Rather than perhaps maybe look at issues from a win-win, because win-win is always better than zero-sum. But at the end of the day, both sides were digging in, and eventually the events that unfolded since the beginning of the budget session, for me, were not surprising.
Look, if you talk about a win-win situation, the minority had 5 demands for government to some sort of review before they collaborate in the passage of the budgets. 4 of these demands were granted. The last is the Elevy, which has been the bone of contention. Will it be right for you to say, based on your analysis, that the minority has not been cooperative since 4 of their pleas have been granted, is left with 1?
Well, I mean, I asked the question the same to the minority side to seek answers. And their response was that for them, the most important issue, the big elephant, was the e-levy. So I think you can give them everything that you want to give them if you don't give them the e-levy. Well, for me, I'm not here to judge who was wrong and who was not wrong. Rather to say, at the end of it, negotiations happened. If you get to a point where there is one big sticking point, well, I think in the interest of win-win, there has to be some compromise. So, yeah, that's where we find ourselves as a country. I mean, it is true for most Ghanaians, all the other issues that were granted to the minority, I'm sure, were non-issue for them. If you take your microphone and go out right now, maybe that's what you are going to hear. People don't care very much about Aka energy and so on. People care about the e-levy and how it's going to affect their daily livelihoods. And I think the minority was playing on that.
Doc, the issue of having an original vote or a casting vote as a deputy speaker has also been a key challenge. In fact, in the last few weeks, we are seeing either the majority or the minority attempting to take advantage of the silence of the Constitution or the standing orders on that. How should we resolve this going forward so that if we ever have a hung parliament like what we have in now, we will not be encountering this challenge?
Well, I think those issues are very clear. But what we have here is that the stakes are high, and people are interpreting them to suit their political interests. Just listen to what happened yesterday. I mean, I heard the deputy speaker saying, on a matter that he ruled and they were going to vote, that he could get up and go and vote. I mean, I found that
and come back.
I mean, you can stretch the interpretation anyhow you want, but to go to that extent was taking it too far. Now, in terms of moving forward, if people can have a different understanding of the rules, I think we have to make them more clearer than they are now, so that you remove any ambiguity that remains.
Very finally,
because I was one of those who said the last time that when it came to quorum, yes, he is a member of parliament representing the people of the choir. I think counting him was right. But, stretching it to the point where, apart from being counted, you want to vote on the same issue that you are presiding over, I think it's quite a bit of a stretch.
So, Doc, do you side with the decision of the House to adjourn sitting till January 18 so that they could build more consensus on the bone of contention and possibly resolve it?
I think I side with that adjournment, but it means that during this period, people don't have to go to sleep. I think they have to do a lot of work behind the scenes. Otherwise, we'll come back and then it will be the same kind of disagreement.
Glad for your time always. Dr. Rashid Dramani is the Executive Director, Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs, and has been helping us with some analysis on the events that we saw in Parliament last night. In some of the days, other stories, the installment of a chief at Asamankesi yesterday resulted in 2 persons sustaining gunshot wounds. The wounded are receiving treatment at the Asamankesi Government Hospital. The Eastern Regional Police Public Relations Officer, DSP Ebenezer Tete, says the suspects are currently at the police headquarters in Accra for investigations.
8 people have been arrested following the disturbances in Asamankesi. And a group of people openly forced open the gates of the chief palace to perform traditional rites at the palace. The police were quickly informed, and when the police got to the palace, they saw a group of persons firing indiscriminately. As a result, 38 of them were rounded up, and some exhibits, including a dead sheep and some cartridges and spent shells, and 2 arms, that is a sidearm, and 1 pump action gun has been retrieved. As we speak, the suspects have been transported to the national headquarters for further action.
How to clear
Apologies for the wrong insert. Meanwhile, the Achim Ibuaka Traditional Council has called on the Inspector General of Police, Dr. George Akufu Dampari, to, as a matter of urgency, ensure that peace is restored at Asamankese after a purported installment of a rival chief yesterday. In a statement addressed to the IGP and signed by the State Secretary DM Oforiata, the council says the current volatile situation requires the personal intervention of the IGP and other security agencies as there are reports of spontaneous retaliations. Now, stakeholders' engagement on the construction of the Palugu multipurpose dam is underway in Bolgatanga in the Upper East region. Although an environment and social impact report has been produced and some consultation with some potentially affected communities taking place, the report is said to have raised more questions than answers. Hence, the forum is to better inform stakeholders about the project, its implementation, and to jointly interrogate its possible impact on livelihoods in the catchment areas. Our Upper East regional correspondent Samuel Ayama joins us via phone to give some more details on the outcome of the meeting. Samuel, if you can hear me, what have you been gathering from the meeting so far?
Right. Thank you very much, Sani, for this opportunity. The construction of the Palugu multipurpose dam, it has been on the drawing board for almost more than 4 or 5 decades. And as we speak, there have been a lot of consultation and some meeting on these the issues surrounding the construction of the Palugu multipurpose dam. Currently, there are a lot of issues which have to do with the resettlement package and then where the dam is actually going to be constructed, because we are told, based on the impact assessment the report, that the dam itself will be in the northeast region, and there are a lot of issues surrounding the construction of the dam. And I have with me here Professor David Miller. He was engaged by EPA on this project. And Prof, you are welcome on GTV News. Tell us, what have you observed so far?
The current engagement is a dialogue to find out whether it's not possible to negotiate some space for those upstream and the implications of the consequence of the upstreamers, because they will be sacrificing their land for water, which means they would lose their production land. And then, but the water will be managed for the downstream, and they will be engaged in active productivity. So these are basically the underlying factors.
Okay, so Prof, we are told the weir will be in the northeast region. The land for the agricultural purposes will also be in the northeast region. How true is that?
Yeah, it's very true. The documents show very clearly, and the design also shows so. And I visited the dam site, the wall called dam. It's located in Kudu, and Kudu is in the northeast region, and it's even in the northeast Mamprusi.
Yes, East Mamprusi.
East Mamprusi, yes.
Yeah.
But the weir is in West Mamprusi. Yeah. And then the irrigable lands are located in West Mampuse, but towards the Fumbisi, Sicily area, Kubori area. That's where the production lands are located. And these lands are about, the target is to develop 20,000 hectares of agricultural land for various forms of agriculture.
So the land is located in Northeast.
Yeah, but it's located in Northeast. And on top of that, there's a 30,000 community water supply for Walawale as part of that package, which is very fine because now it looks like it's a multi-pronged attempt to resolve development issues. But the argument is that this can be extended to the upstream communities that will be suffering. Can equally get them water systems, and it's possible through irrigation engineering to have some lands also irrigated upstream, not necessarily in the dam area, but abutted land that is close to the dam area, and you can get other development activities that will make them comfortable. Meanwhile, you make resettlement also possible. And you know, resettlements are normally optional because there are some who say, no, we don't want to go there. But then they should be able to engage in this livelihood activity. Okay. And I always emphasize that if we look at what exists now, the women, the youth, and also the children are worse off.
Okay, so Prof, let me also get to Professor Apusiga is also here. Tell us your take on this construction.
I think, thank you very much. I think it's a very laudable idea, and as my colleague has said, a lot of the activity in terms of the outcomes of the project is concentrated in Northeast, which is good and welcome. But we also find that the area that most of the destruction will happen in terms of the flooding is what he has called the upstream area. In terms of people's lands, communities being submerged, livelihoods being lost, aquatic, environmental concerns. And so far, when we look at the document, we see that the discussions about the social impacts of the project has not been dealt with comprehensively, such that, for instance, if there is water for Walwale, for instance, what about the health issues? What investment is would be made in terms of taking care of the health needs of these people who will be close to the new dam? What about education? We already have examples from here where in the rainy season, teachers cannot go and teach, children cannot cross to senior schools, nurses cannot go to health facilities. What are we doing in terms of investing in education? What about the futures of our people? You know, so far compensation that we know of is that they are going to make monetary payments, and we don't think that this will go far enough. Monetary payment, such compensation should also include resettlement. It should also include social regeneration and environmental regeneration, the destruction of the land. It will definitely have effect on ecological balance. And here we are even talking about issues of biocultural diversity. What can we do to be able to address all those issues?
Okay. Thank you very much. I would like to thank Professor David Miller and also Professor Apusiga for their time. We'll continue to engage stakeholders on the construction of the Palugu Multipurpose Dam and then come your way with a detailed report. For GBC News, Samuel Ayama, Bolga.
Back in Accra, UNDP Ghana is shaping the minds of the media to modify complex data into actionable outcomes to enhance socio-economic development. Now, for starters, about 40 journalists, public relations practitioners and personnel from the Information Services Department have been trained on data storytelling at the Ghana Institute of Journalism. Clara Milano has more in the following report.
How to clearly interpret and analyze data for the public is a difficult task for most journalists. Introducing Ghanaian journalists to the field of study is part of the plan to bridge the knowledge gap to drive policies and help attain the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, which is currently the most important agenda of the United Nations. Throughout the 12-week data training course, the Ghana Institute of Journalism schooled participants on principles of open data, challenges with data storytelling, data journalism practice in Ghana and international media, handling and reporting economic, business, health and medical data, data treatment and cleaning, statistical literacy, public opinion, polling and survey, among others.
The issue is making data accessible, understandable to the public, because these are areas of complexity which society need but are not made available to them because our journalists over the years have not been able to communicate effectively.
UNDP Ghana, financiers of the program, said equipping journalists to interpret and report accurately on statistical data will minimize errors associated with their work.
We want to encourage them to use the knowledge that they have acquired to report more on SDGs issues and challenges with evidence and with data, so that we can all get a change.
Partners of the course, the Ghana Statistical Service, applauded the initiative, which is a capacity-building path for journalists to facilitate change, growth, planning, and national development. Following the successful completion of the basic course in 2021, UNDP, GSS, and GIJ hope to bring on board the intermediary and advanced trainings in data journalism in the near future. For GBC News, Clara Mlano reporting.
Now, the people of Dunkwa in the central region have celebrated the Quesadilla Festival with a call on natives home and abroad to contribute towards the development of the municipality. The Dunkwahini Okofrobo Obin urged drivers to adhere to road traffic regulations, especially during the Christmas festivities, to reduce carnage on the roads. He condemned the LGBTQ activity and also called on his members to contribute financially towards the development of the community. He said anyone known to be engaging in the act will be publicly disgraced and banished from the community. The Municipal Chief Executive Officer for Upper Dintra East, Mr. Ebenezer Pierforson, thanked traditional authorities for the support in developmental projects in the municipality. Now, Ghana has initiated a temporary travel restriction on all travelers from Israel and South Korea. The temporary restriction is for 14 days beginning December 2021 for both countries. Apart from that, a travel ban has been imposed on all travelers to and from Malta, also beginning December 20, due to the Omicron COVID-19 variant. A statement from the Ghana's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration issued on Friday said Ghana does not recognize any of the COVID-19 vaccine certificates from Malta. To this end, the ministry wishes to state that the general public should take note of the above and adhere to it accordingly, except in exceptional humanitarian cases or during official travels. It says permission would have to be obtained from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in such exceptional cases. Israel recently placed Ghana on the red list of countries with the highest risk on its health travel notices and restrictions. The lists are updated and revised with infection rates. Travel to a country on the Israel red list is banned for Israeli citizens and permanent residents unless they have permission from the exceptions committee. Per the rules, all travelers going to Israel from a country on the red list, including vaccinated or recovered individuals who carry a valid COVID-19 certificate issued by the Ministry of Health, must complete full isolation length. Those who are neither recovered nor vaccinated will be transported to isolation in a managed isolation facility until they test negative on the PCR test that they took upon arrival in Israel. It's still News Hour 2. If you are watching on Facebook, you can share your comment as well. We'll go for a break. When we return, I'll be bringing you the very latest from the world of business.
Hello, welcome to the business news, and my name is Esther Edu Ohumewu. Parliament rose for the Christmas holidays today without a vote on the e-levy. The Finance Committee, however, okayed it on Monday, 20th December 2021, with MTN and Airtel Tigo also reducing their charges by 0.25% to ease the burden on customers. We have on the line an economist, Mr. Paul Apiakonedu, to speak to this issue. Good afternoon, Paul.
Good afternoon, Esther, and thanks for having me on your show this afternoon.
You're welcome. Will the reduction by the telcos reduce the burden the e-levy will have on customers?
Sure, I think indeed that is a good step, and a step that shows that the telcos indeed cares about their customers and really want to reduce the burden on their customers with the imposition of the e-levy. And just as the telcos have decided to reduce their charges by 2.5%, I think it will be very important if the government will also consider reducing the 1.75 to somewhere around 1%, so that the average Ghanaian will be able to manage with the burden that will come with the imposition of the e-levy.
Talking of the reduction, is the percentage anything to go by judging from the profits made by the telcos?
I think the telcos, particularly MTN, is making a lot in terms of profits from mobile money and also from telecommunication services in general. But they are into business to make profits, so you cannot blame them. Probably they are doing things right, and so they are getting a bigger share of the market, and from which they are making their profits. So you cannot blame them. And I think government is also imposing profit taxes on the profits that they are making. So government is already benefiting from the profits that the telcos are raking in. So we cannot blame them as a country. We just have to make sure that indeed we are able to widen the benefits that come to us as a country from the profits that come in. So if we may want to consider increasing the profit rates so that we can be able to take back some part of the profits that MTN and the other telecom companies are making, that is fine, judging from the fact that MTN is probably owned by foreign investors. Majority of the shares are owned by foreigners, and so most of the profit probably will be repatriated, which in a way also affects the cedi depreciation or puts pressure on our cedi. So I think it's up to the government to adapt policies to make sure that most of the benefits that are coming from the telecom sector accrues to Ghanaians and benefits the Ghanaian economy.
Well, before I let you go, what will be the overall impact of the e-levy on government's drive to reduce its debt levels, which now stands at 78% of GDP?
I think indeed, at the moment, government is in a critical condition. And if you look at the 2022 budget, government is estimating to spend up to about a little over 37 billion Ghana cedis on debt servicing and about 7 billion Ghana cedis on capital amortization. Now, if you look at 2021, as at the third quarter, I think interest payments and wages and salary overshot government revenues by about 3%. So what it means is that going forward, government has to generate more revenues to be able to reduce the budget deficits. And with a budgeted deficit of about 7%, even after taking care of the e-levy, What it means is that without a e-levy, government will be in a very tight fiscal space, and for which reason government is not ready to concede or listen to the pleas of the minority in parliament and also the average Ghanaian with regards to scrapping the e-levy. So the e-levy is very important in terms of reducing the pressure on the government or government's finances. That will be all for now, Paul. Thank you very much, Esther, for having me this afternoon. You're welcome. You're welcome. We're speaking to an economist, Mr. Paul Apia Konedu, who was talking to us about the telcos reducing charges by 25%. We'll have the interbank and commodity figures for the day.